My name is Shauna Johnson, and my mother is Roberta Pelkey from the Sayote First Nation, and my father is Terry Johnson from the Clams Band. And my roots come from, well, I've mostly grown up in the Sayote Reserve, but um, my role at the Saanich Leadership Council is a marine use planner, and I just started October 7th.
Excellent. Can you tell us what you did before October 7th in terms of your career?
Sure. My last position, I was with the Firelight Group, and I was an Indigenous community planner. That was my title. And I did a lot of land use planning before. And prior to that, for about a year after I graduated, I was with the Redaw project, working as a contractor through the Sayote First Nation. And for that project, it was very specific and focused. It was focused on revitalizing Indigenous law using creation stories. And my part in it was going through all of the stories and articulating mostly natural law related to a very focused research question on marine issues. So our question was how are we going to protect the marine environment? Because there was a lot of, well, the main issue at the time was being Kinder Morgan, going through all of our waterway. And as Saanich people, that's like half of our territory. So, through that process, we did a lot of community engagement, which is where the planning part comes in. And we did very focused sessions on articulating those laws and deliberating what those meant. It was a very community-based, community-driven process.
Wow. So, Shauna, can you tell us what kind of training and education you bring to the table?
Yeah, sure. I originally started doing a technical diploma at Camosun College, and that so I have a diploma in environmental technology. And I did that for a couple of years, and I worked in the field as an environmental technologist, mostly with like a consulting company at the time. And then after that, I felt like I was doing some of the work that people who had degrees were doing. So I'm like, I might as well go back and get my degree. So I went back to Railroads University, and I did my bachelor degree in environmental science. And I completed that in 2009. And I ended up working a couple more years after that. But what I felt was missing at the time was that I really wanted to come back and use my skills at home. So I was fortunate to be able to do that working with the Sayote First Nation. And I was the environmental technologist there for 2.5 years, 2 years. I originally started doing traditional use studies, and that was a very different position than what I thought I would end up doing, but it got me in, and I was able to interview elders, and they were talking about how they use the waters and the land, and telling me stories about our history and all of the place names and places where they harvested and used on a regular basis. And that was a position for about 6 months. And then the lands department saw my credentials and saw that I was also Sayote, and asked if I would join the lands team. So I worked for them as the environmental technologist for 2 years after that. And then I got to the point in my career where I was, feeling that I could do more. So I decided to go back to school again for my master's. And it was almost like I was doing planning already at the time. I just didn't have the right tools in my skill set, or even knew what I was really doing in terms of planning work, I should say. But so I went to the University of BC, and it's a 2-year master's program called Indigenous Community Planning. And I graduated that program in 2016. And actually, I'm now working there as an adjunct professor. And that title itself is kind of weird too, because mostly what I do is mentoring. So in my second year as a master's, instead of a master's thesis, we do a practicum. So for 8 months, we went to nomination up in Powell. They were right in the middle of ratifying their treaty. So they were becoming a treaty nation in that year. So everything that they are planning was focused around was supporting that. And they were really excited about knowing what the youth wanted. Looking forward to treaty, how did the youth envision their future? So we did a lot of youth engagement, and that was our main focus of my practicum. So now that there are more students going through this program, a lot of them Indigenous, which is great. I'm mentoring a pair of students just like myself, like going through that program, but I'm mentoring them one-on-one. So we're going up to with Stillatin First Nation, for example, this year. And I was also supporting the students last year through that program with the same community. And now it's my second year. So I'm very excited about that too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, impressive to say the least. So what are you going to be working on at the WLC?
Yeah, well, I mean, we were going through my job description last week and finalizing my title. And so marine use planning, the original job description was a marine issues analyst and outreach coordinator, which I was like, whoa, that's a mouthful. How am I supposed to say that all the time to people? So I was like, as a planner, you generally wear a lot of hats anyway. You wear the hat of, sometimes negotiating or advocating or communicating things to community members or, educating. And then you also facilitate and engage people, and there's all these different hats. So I was like, marine use planner just seems like it fits underneath all of that. I'll be looking at marine use issues that affect the nations together, especially reaching out to the community members and asking, like, what do you think are the issues that you're most concerned about? What matters most to you? And bringing that back to the Saanich Leadership Council and helping them make a plan to address these issues in the future. So looking forward, we were talking about the possibility of doing a marine use plan, which I'm very excited about. I've done a marine use plan before in the past, working with Firelight, or at least the start of it. And also really looking at how we can get our people out on the waters, doing monitoring, doing research in the marine environment, hopefully like being the Indigenous guardians, hopefully out there. The eyes and ears on the water. And I think that's kind of everything in a nutshell for what I'll be doing. I'm very excited about it. It's really good to be home and to working for the Saanich people in this way again, and being able to use my skills as well. So yeah, I've got 3 years, I guess, in this position so far, and hopefully this may end up growing into something bigger.
So when you're not doing all of the things that you do professionally, which is quite a lot, what do you do outside work or to relax or to enjoy yourself?
Sometimes I like to bead. But sometimes I also like to just, in my family, we do cedar bark weaving. So sometimes I like to do that. Most of the time I just like to be outside and just to go for a walk with my dog. I really like to, go to movies and or sometimes just read a book at home. And yeah, just